Hi, today we are going to learn the second poem prescribed for 12th grade students found in the textbook Flamingo. The title of the poem is An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum by Stephen Spender. The poem revolves around the poet's political views and brings forth the difficulties faced by the kids in the slum. It was written to highlight the social injustice prevailing in the world in those days, in the days of the poet, that is Stephen Spender. It is interesting to note that Stephen Spender, the poet, took a keen interest in the politics of his days and declared himself to be a socialist. He concentrated chiefly on the themes of social injustice and class inequalities in his work. It is worth knowing the fact that the poet lived from 1909 to 1995, and civil rights movement in the United States of America lasted from 1954 to 1968. Now you might be thinking why I mentioned the time period when the poet lived and compared it to the period in which the civil rights movement in the United States lasted. It is because it has something to do with this poem. You will understand it very shortly. This movement, the civil rights movement in the United States of America, was a decades-long struggle by African Americans to end legalized racial discrimination, disenfranchisement, and racial segregation in the United States. No wonder the poet lived in this period, and it left a very lasting impact, it left a very lasting impression in his mind, and he came out with this poem. The poem describes the social inequalities which are prevailing in the society. He describes the condition of the students in an elementary school which is situated in a slum area. The poet wants to draw attention of everyone towards the kids so that their life can be improved and they can be trained to become good citizens rather than criminals. So with this background and with this political setup, if we try to understand this poem, it will be quite easy for us to understand. Now, moving to the main poem, that is an elementary school classroom in a slum. Let's try to understand it line by line, word by word. So here we go. Far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces, like rootless weeds, the hair torn round their pallor, the tall girl with her weighed down head, the paper-seeming boy with rat's eyes, the stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones, reciting a father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. At back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young. His eyes live in a dream of squirrel's game in the tree room other than this. This is the first stanza. Let's try to understand it. Far, far from gusty waves. Now, before we go into the detailed explanation, let me tell you, this poem has to be taken figuratively as well as literally. That means the poem has to be interpreted in a literal way as well as in a figurative way. Now, this will be very clear even from the very first line. Far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces. That means the faces of these children are very far from gusty waves. Now, if you were to take the literal meaning of the expression gusty waves, it is strong waves. But what is the term strong waves signify here? Being kids, being children, they should be very agile, they should be very active, they should be, energetic and so on. But they are very far from being these things. They are very far from being exuberant and energetic. Agility is something that is lacking in them. It is because they have not been taken proper care. They are underfed and they are sickly. So in that sense, the poet says that they are far, far from gusty waves. These children, which children? The children in the slum area, they are very far from being energetic and active and agile. Why? They have not been taken proper care. So they are very far from the world outside. They are very far from how the children of their age appear to be or should appear to be. So in that sense, they are very far from gusty waves, these children's faces, like rootless weeds. Now, rootless weeds. Weeds, first of all, is not something that we love cultivating. I'm sure you must not have ever seen any farmer who cultivates weeds in his field. So it is something unwanted. So what is the point of the poet? The poet says that they are rootless weeds in the sense that they are unwanted, they are rejected, they are never ever thought about. So they are badly kept and they lack stability. No one ever bothers to think about them. They are unwanted, rootless weeds. No one ever bothers to take care of them or think about them. So in that sense, the poet says, like rootless weeds. Then the hair torn round their pallor. That means even their hair is scattered. It has not been arranged properly. They have not combed their hair. They have not even bothered to take care of their appearance. And maybe for many days they have not even bathed. They have not even taken care of their appearance properly. So the hair torn round their pallor. Pallor refers to the pale appearance of the face. So their hair is scattered around their face. Their appearance is not at all good. Their appearance reflects what they really are. So that is to say, the hair torn round their pallor. Then, after giving these introductory lines, the poet goes on to talk about some specific kids. The poet specifies some children who are a part of this school. Let's look at them one by one. First of all, the poet says, the tall girl with her weighed down head. There is a tall girl whose head is weighed down, and probably her head is weighed down because she is overburdened with poverty. She is depressed, maybe because of physical, mental and emotional exhaustion. Since she belongs to a very poor family, she must have been exhausted or feeling burdensome because of physical, mental and emotional pressure. She must have known this fact very well, that her family had to eke out their living. They had to somehow manage to meet the both ends. So because of these reasons, her head must have been weighed down. The tall girl with her weighed down head. Then there is another fellow. Then there is another boy, the paper seeming boy. Now the paper seeming boy, what does it reflect? Paper seeming boy means he is very thin, he is very sickly, he is malnourished. He has not been fed properly. He appears like paper. The paper seeming boy with rat's eyes. Now, different critiques give different interpretations for this expression rat's eyes. Some say that, it is the expression rat's eyes can be taken as his eyes are very defensive and scared like a rat. And some others even, they say that he has felt some sort of greed for eternity. His greed has never been satisfied. We can take the either of these two explanations. We can also say that he was quite scared. He was afraid, just as a rat looks. And we can also say that his greed had never been satisfied, because a rat looks in that way also. So both of these interpretations are correct for this expression, with rat's eyes. So paper seeming boy, he is very lean and lanky, he is very thin, he is not taken care of properly, and his eyes have been compared by the poet to a rat's eyes. Then the poet goes on to talk about another student, the stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones, reciting a father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. Now, what is the meaning of this expression? The stunted, unlucky. Stunted means he is not properly developed. His development, his growth has been stopped. So he is ill-developed. The stunted, unlucky heir. Now, in what sense he is unlucky? Because being an heir, he should have inherited something good from his father. But what has he inherited? He has inherited only the disease, the physical appearance, the twisted bone from his father. The stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones. So instead of inheriting something positive, something good, what he has inherited is only something negative, and that is twisted bones. The disease. The children have inherited their diseased bones from their parents. Now, it implies diseased generation. So in that sense, the child is unlucky because he has inherited something bad, something negative. Now, what is he doing? Reciting a father's gnarled disease, rough disease, twisted disease, his lesson from his desk. So actually he is not reciting his lesson, but enumerating the disease inherited from his father. So see what a pathetic condition the child is in. So he is reciting his father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. And then the poet again points out to another student who is quite unnoted. See, at the back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young. There is another fellow who is unnoted. He is not noticed by many. At the back of the dim class, that means even the class is dim. It is not properly lit. So at the back of the dim and depressed class, there is something. What is that? One unnoted, sweet and young. There is one student, there is one fellow who is unnoted. He cannot be easily seen. And how does he look like? Sweet and young. His eyes live in a dream of squirrel's game in tree room other than this. That means other than these children, he seems to be dreaming. What does he seem to be? The child is distracted as he desires to be a squirrel. So the first possibility is this, that he wants to just go out and entertain himself. He just wants to be a squirrel, play in a hollow tree. And it can even be taken as ironically, it reflects his current life. Then this phrase can also be taken as a suggestive of the world of dreams that he lives in. And moreover, it can also be taken as, he could also be dreaming of a better tomorrow. He may be thinking of better prospects in the days to come. We do not know what he is thinking. We do not know what he is dreaming. But one thing is very sure, that he is fantasizing something. He is in a world of fantasy. He doesn't seem to be interested in the activities that are going on in the class. So anyway, he is in his world of dreams other than this. So this is the first stanza. In the first stanza, the poet talks about the poet gives us introductory lines, and then he goes on to talk about different kids, different students of this slum school, and how they appear to be, how they look. Now moving to the second stanza. On sour cream walls, donations. Shakespeare's head, cloudless at dawn, civilized dome riding all cities, belled, flowery, Tyrolese valley, open-handed map avoiding the world its world. And yet, for these children, these windows, not this map, their world, where all their future is painted with a fog, a narrow street sealed in with a lead sky, far, far from rivers, capes, and stars of words. Now let's look at this explanation as well. On sour cream walls. Now, in what sense, the walls appear to be sour cream? What is this? Actually, the walls have not been painted for years. It looks very pale and dingy, yellowish. So it reflects the poor condition of the wall. So in that sense, on sour cream walls, donations. So what appear to be, or what is displayed on the walls? Donations. That means people, or list of people who have given donations to run this school. Obviously, the high-class people, who have not well taken care of these kids. So they have given donations, so their names display on these dirty walls. The building has not been renovated for years. It has not been painted for years. So the condition is very pathetic, condition is very miserable and bad. Now, then what appears, then what is there? Then there is Shakespeare's head, cloudless at dawn, civilized dome riding all cities. Now here, there are different critics who give again different explanations for this Shakespeare's head. Now one thing is very sure, that there is a picture displaying Shakespeare. Now some say that these slums are surrounded by the civilized city, and the children cannot experience the beauty of the sky at dawn and are unaware of it. So children are quite unaware of the beauty of the world outside, and all around them are only concrete structures of the cities. So this is what is said by some critics. The life in the slum consists the life in the slum contrasts with the cloudless sky at dawn and concrete structures which overrides the city. This is one explanation given by some critics. But I think the closest explanation is something else. When I was making a thorough study on these lines, I came across the views of some critics. They say that his head, which is bald, looks like the rising sun at the horizon. And at the time of daybreak, the sun is rising at the horizon and is semicircular like a dome shape, and it seems to be behind all cities. So that is the meaning of the expression riding all cities. So it appears to be behind all cities. So all at the time of the daybreak, the sun that is rising at the horizon and is semicircular, that actually reflects the dome shape actually. And I think this is the most fitting explanation. So anyway, that is Shakespeare's head, cloudless at dawn, civilized Rome riding all cities. Then belled, flowery, Tyrolese, valley. Then there is, another picture of a beautiful valley, that is Tyrolese valley, which is, full of fragrant flowers, and these children of the slum will never be able to experience this beauty. So this is a sort of contrast between what the world contains, between what the world has, and these children do not have any access to these things except to see them on these maps, on these pictures. Then there is open-handed map. Then there is an open-handed map avoiding the world its world. That means the map tries to give some idea about how the real world is. But then, sad to say that, and yet for these children, these windows, not this map, their world. That means for these kids, it is their windows, not their map. That means the world that they can see through the windows only is their world actually. What they can see, what can they see? They can see only the slum area, the slum area that they hail from, that they come from. So for these kids, it is their window which is their world, these windows, not this map. So whatever they can see in the map doesn't matter anything to them. For them, their world is the window, the things that can see through the window. Their world where all their future is painted with a fog. That means their future is painted with a fog. We cannot see anything clearly through fog. So what does the poet want to say? The poet means to say that their future is very bleak, it is dull, it is not at all bright. So that is to say, their future is painted with a fog. Then he says, a narrow street sealed in with a lead sky. Now this also has got two meanings. One is the literal meaning. Since they come from a slum area, the streets in the area must be very narrow. They must not have access to proper roads. And second explanation of this can also be taken as figurative. Narrow street, that means their future is very narrow, their prospect is very narrow, and with lead sky, lead sky refers to the dull sky. So hopelessness is very much visible in their lives. So in that sense, a narrow street sailed in with a lead sky. Then narrow streets, it shows that the children do not have any better future. The narrow roads symbolize the restricted quality of the lives of these children. Then the last line of the second stanza, far, far from rivers, capes and stars of words. Now they are very far from the beauty of the world outside. Rivers and capes and seas, these things also symbolize, they resemble adventure and excitement, which these children they are deprived of. They do not have access to all these things. And stars also stand for a bright future, so they don't have access to these things. So the poet says they are very far from bright prospects, they are very far from better tomorrow, they are very far from better future. So here we see in the second stanza the detailed explanation of the condition of the classroom and the children and their prospect. Let's stop here. In my next video, I shall come to you with the explanation of the last two stanzas. Meanwhile, you can go through the text so that you will get a better understanding of the poem. Thanks for watching.